The galaxy is a wound that never heals. It bleeds stars, empires, and the cries of men. A billion souls are born into darkness, each one convinced they were cursed to awaken in this age, the final age when hope itself is treated like treason. The sky is not blue here. It is iron, always iron. Smoke from 1,000 manufactorums claws at the horizon, rising from cities that never sleep. Ash hangs in the air like unending winter, carried by winds that stink of promethium, blood, and something else, something sweeter. Warp sweet, corruption waiting in the lungs. And under that sky men work. Men suffer. Men die. They bend their backs until spines splinter, hauling or to fuel ships they will never see. Ships that sail to wars they will never know. They kneel in chapels, whispering prayers to a god they will never hear. They beg, they curse, and still they endure. The soundscape is endless. The scream of drills, the hiss of steam, the clatter of chains, shouts of overseers, prayers muttered too quickly, the cough of lungs collapsing into themselves. Each sound blends into a single chorus, the hymn of survival. A hymn sung not in hope, but in terror of what comes if the singing stops. We believed this was all there was. We believed we understood cruelty, but we were wrong, because one day the sky tore open, not with demons, not with the angels of death, not with the warp's familiar poison. No, came with light, green light, a glow alien and unholy, different from the warp's corruption yet no less terrifying. And from it came a boy who was not a boy with a weapon strapped to his wrist, a weapon that could become anything. We had a name for him whispered in broken dialects and under hushed breath, as if speaking it aloud would bring down judgment. The Shape Thief, the Alien King, the 10,000 skins. The galaxy would come to know him by another name, Ben10. But this was not the child hero of soft tales or myths. No, this was Ben thrown into the crucible of the 41st millennium, where laughter is heresy, where mercy is weakness, where even gods can rot. And in this nightmare, the Omnitrix did not shine as salvation. It became something else, a beacon, curse, a weapon that the galaxy, in all its hunger, would never allow to remain free. You see, the Imperium does not tolerate miracles. Chaos does not tolerate rivals. And Xenos do not tolerate competition. The Omnitrix was all three at once. And so, from the moment its emerald glow cut through the ash and smoke, the fate of countless worlds shifted. Some believed it was the Emperor's will. Others whispered it was a trick of the dark gods. Most simply despaired, because if a boy could become everything, a warrior stronger than Astartes, a beast stranger than any Xenos, a nightmare deadlier than any demon, then he could also become nothing. He could vanish, become ash, become the next tragedy told by starving men in freezing dark. We thought we had seen monsters before, but Ben10 with the Omnitrix taught us what true monstrosity meant. Not because of what he became, but because of what the galaxy forced him to be. And yet, this is not a tale of triumph. This is not a tale of hope. This is a tale of how even miracles are chewed to bone in the 41st millennium. It begins with a boy, it ends with a weapon, and in between, only suffering. But that was only the beginning. No one knows where he fell from. Some said he tumbled from the stars, dragged screaming from a rent in reality. Others swore he was spat out by the warp, a demon clothed in flesh to tempt the desperate. But I was there. I remember the light, green fire, pure and blinding, cut through the clouds of ash that forever hung above the manufacturing world of Griffin Secundus. Workers dropped their chains, overseers shielded their eyes. For a heartbeat, even the endless grinding machines went silent, as if the world itself held its breath. Then he came, not a warrior, not an angel, a boy, young, wild-eyed, coughing as though the air itself burned his throat. His clothes were strange, alien fabrics too clean for a hive's soot. His hands were scraped, his face smeared with blood that was not his own, and on his wrist the thing, the jewel, the curse. The Omnitrix pulsed with sickly emerald radiance, its symbol spinning, searching. None of us knew what it was, but we felt it. Felt the way the air bent around it, the way shadows recoiled. It was power, raw and unshaped. It was choice. And in the Imperium, choice is the greatest heresy of all. The first to reach him were the enforcers. Clad in black carapace armor, batons crackling with shock, they closed in. To them, he was no miracle, no prophecy. Just a vagrant, an unsanctioned body in a world where every soul is counted and taxed. They shouted. He didn't understand their words. He tried to speak back, voice cracked, panicked, begging. They struck him. He fell to his knees, coughing blood, eyes wide with the realization that he was not in his world anymore. That here, mercy did not exist. And then the Omnitrix spoke. A chirp, a click, a mechanical voice alien to us all. Alien life form detected. The boy's hand slammed the dial in desperation, and in an instant he was no longer a boy. Flame, screams, the smell of burning oil and skin. Where he had knelt, there now towered a creature of fire, its body magma and molten stone, its arms trailing cinders that set the ash-choked air alight. The enforcers became torches, their armor melting into their flesh. The crowd fell to their knees, some screaming in prayer, others in terror. Thus, the first alien of the Omnitrix was born into the Imperium, Heatblast. And with it, the galaxy took notice. It spread like plague through the Habs and Manufactura. Stories of a boy who could become flame, who could turn overseers into ash with a gesture. To the workers, he was hope. To the overseers, a threat. To the ecclesiarchy, a test of faith. Within hours, the Arbites had descended. Sirens howled. Streets sealed. Dozens executed for spreading false prophecy. Entire blocks were cleansed with fire to contain the rumor. But you cannot burn away a miracle. The boy ran. He shifted. One moment a beast of diamond that bullets shattered against. The next a creature faster than the eye, green lightning trailing behind. Each form was stranger, each sight more heretical. And yet, the Omnitrix was no blessing. Every transformation tore him further from himself. The strain of alien muscle, the flood of senses never meant for a human mind. He screamed each time the device burned into his flesh, rewriting him, rebuilding him. He was never in control. Not truly. And in that, the Imperium found its truth. He was not a savior. He was a weapon. They sent the Astartes. Not a full chapter. Just a squad, dispatched to contain anomaly. But to us, who had never seen Space Marines before, it was as though gods themselves walked. Their ceramite armor gleamed crimson, their pauldrons marked with the sigil of the blood ravens. When they found him, he was cornered in the lower hive, half-starved, surrounded by a mob of workers who prayed to him as saint and shield. The Astartes slaughtered the mob, not with cruelty, with efficiency. Bolters barked, flesh shredded, skulls burst like fruit. Men, women, children, it did not matter. To harbor the alien was heresy. To protect him was death. The boy wept as he watched them die. He screamed at them to stop. They didn't understand his tongue, and wouldn't have cared if they did. He struck the dial, and the hive trembled. Where the boy had stood rose a titan of muscle and rage. For arms, vast and crimson, each fist cracking stone. He roared, and the sound shook the bones in my chest. He fought the Astartes hand to hand, their chains words shrieking against his skin, their bolters tearing chunks that healed too quickly. It was not victory, it was survival. But in that survival, the impossible happened. An Astartes fell, broken against the wall, helm caved in by fists that could crush tanks, his blood steaming in the cold hive air. The first Space Marine many of us had ever seen, dead not by demon, not by Xenofleet, but by a boy who was not a boy. The blood ravens withdrew, but not in defeat. No, they withdrew to report, to summon more. And in that moment, every faction, every power, every watching I turned toward Griffin Secundus. The Imperium saw a weapon too dangerous to ignore. Chaos saw a soul too fragile not to corrupt. And the Xenos, watching from shadows, saw a rival who could become them all. The galaxy shifted. The boy had arrived. And with him, tragedy had only begun. But that was only the beginning. You must understand something before we continue. The galaxy does not move in wars and crusades alone. It moves in the shuffling feet of workers, in the gnaw of empty stomachs, in the prayers whispered by lips cracked from thirst. If you want to know what it was like in those first years of the Shapethief's legend, you must see what life was always like for us. We woke to sirens, not alarms of attack, but the sirens that marked the start of a shift. A single note, metallic and hollow, echoing through hive corridors thick with soot. It meant, rise, work, do not falter, do not ask why. The air stank of oil and rust. The walls sweated condensation that tasted of iron. Every surface was slick, every breath a cough. Breakfast was a ladle of corpse starch, chalky, tasteless, pressed into bricks recycled from the dead. We chewed without complaint. To complain was to invite the lash. The children worked beside us. Small hands fit into machines where ours could not. They bled often. When they died, the overseers docked our rations for negligence. Faith was constant. At the beginning of every shift, we knelt to pray to the God Emperor. We prayed with mouths that knew he could not hear, prayed with hearts that no longer believed. But to skip prayer was death. So we prayed for forgiveness, for survival, for anything. And then we worked, hours uncounted, hunched over conveyor belts, hammering or stoking furnaces. The sound was a constant scream. Metal against metal, the hiss of steam, the occasional cry when a hand slipped and was swallowed by gears. At night, we slept on stone. We dreamt of food, of silence, of air that didn't taste of rust. This was life. This was all life. And into that life came whispers of him. It began in the lowest habs. The story of a boy who could become a beast of fire, who struck down enforcers. A boy who fought the angels of death themselves and lived. They called him many things. The Shape Thief, the Alien King, the 10,000 skins. To some, he was a saint. To others, a curse. But all agreed he was real. Children carved crude imitations of the Omnitrix into their wrists with rusted nails, bleeding as they prayed for its power to come to them. Mothers whispered his name when their infants starved, hoping he might hear. Men who had lost everything begged for his return, if only to watch the overseers burn. The ecclesiarchy noticed, and so sermons changed. Priests bellowed that the boy was a false prophet, a trick of chaos. They said his fire was not the emperor's light but the warp's corruption. They demanded we renounce him. Those who hesitated were dragged into the streets and executed. Their corpses were left to rot as warning. But the whispers never stopped. Because whispers are the only rebellion the poor can afford. I remember one night, we sat in darkness, the power failing again. My brother, his body wasted from hunger, leaned close and whispered, "What if he comes back? What if he saves us?" I laughed, bitter, broken. Save us? Nothing saves us. Not even the God Emperor saves us. And yet, even as I said it, I felt something. Not hope. Hope is too clean. It was hunger, raw and sharp. Not for food but for vengeance. And vengeance of vengeance the Shape Thief could give. The Imperium responded as it always did. With cruelty, with fire, with iron. Propaganda spread. Posters declared, "Heresy wears many faces." Arbites patrolled, dragging away anyone caught speaking his name. Random work crews were executed for spreading mutation. It was irony. They believed silence could erase him. But every act of cruelty made us remember him more. The boy who fought back. The boy who changed. Daily life grew stranger. Some began rituals, burning candles under crude drawings of green fire. Others refused to eat, believing starvation would bring his return. A gang of workers even carved their flesh into alien shapes, declaring themselves children of 10. The overseers killed them all, of course, but the sight remained. Their bodies, twisted by their own knives, hanging in the square, marked with the words, "Faith is heresy." I tell you this so you understand. For us, Ben10 was never truly a person. He was an idea. And in the Imperium, ideas are more dangerous than weapons. And yet, Not all who heard of him prayed for his return. Some betrayed. Neighbors reported neighbors. Families turned on each other. Fathers denounced sons for whispering of the shape thief. Not out of faith, out of fear. The Imperium thrives on betrayal. It rewards the informer. So men spat on their brothers to gain another day of life. And we learned to mistrust, to fear each other as much as the overseers. Thus the shape thief did not unite us. He divided us, as all miracles do in the 41st millennium. But that was only the beginning. The Imperium does not rule through love. It rules through fear, through hunger, through the slow erosion of the soul until obedience is all that remains. And on Griffin Secundus, after the boy with the green light appeared, the screws of oppression turned tighter than ever before. The overseers changed first. They were always cruel, always drunk on the power of life and death over workers. But now, with whispers of the shape thief spreading, their punishments grew inventive. Where once they lashed, now they burned. Where once they docked rations, now they made examples. A man caught speaking of the alien king was stripped naked, covered in promethium, and set alight while his fellow workers were forced to continue their shift beside the burning body. The overseers said it was mercy, that at least his corpse would feed the furnaces. Another was chained to a conveyor belt, dragged screaming into the grinders until he was nothing but pulp. The workers gagged from the smell, but none dared look away. The lesson was clear. Speak of him and you die. Stay silent and you suffer anyway. The Arbites came next. They patrolled the Hablocks in black armor, shotguns slung across their chests, eyes hidden behind helm lenses that reflected no soul. They did not ask questions. They did not give warnings. They executed. I remember a woman caught with a child's sketch, a crude drawing of the Omnitrix scratched into a slate. She swore it was nothing, just a child's fancy. They shot her through the head, then shot the child, then burned the slate. The Arbites do not reason. They do not forgive. They enforce. And with each corpse left rotting in the streets, the message spread faster than whispers. The shape thief is forbidden, which only made us whisper more. Then came the priests. The ecclesiarchy seized on the moment, declaring the boy a test of faith. Their sermons thundered through the vox speakers. Beware the false angel who wears many skins. His fire is not the emperor's light, but the warp's corruption. His flesh is a mask. His power is poison. Only the throne is true. We were forced to gather in squares, to kneel until our knees bled as the priests ranted. Anyone who failed to shout "Amen" loud enough was dragged into the crowd's center and beaten to death with censer staves. The irony was endless. We prayed not to believe, but to survive. We shouted "Amen" with mouths that tasted of ash and blood. We begged the emperor to protect us from hope itself. The administratum played its part too. Paperwork spread like plague. New decrees, new audits, new records. Whole departments assigned to track rumors of the boy. Every birth, every death, every slip of tongue noted, categorized, stamped, filed. Entire families were disappeared because an uncle 3 Hablocks away had once spoken the name. This is how the Imperium strangles its people. Not just with fire, not just with chains, but with paperwork. With the slow crush of bureaucracy that makes rebellion impossible, because you are already guilty before you rise. And above all, there were the Astartes. The Blood Ravens returned, not in squads now, but in companies. Their crimson armor strode through the streets like walking fortresses, bolters at the ready. They said nothing. They killed rarely, but their silence was worse than executions. Because their presence meant one thing: the boy still lived. And they meant to find him. Life became ritual. Not holy ritual, but ritual of survival. Each day we checked our words before speaking, checked our shadows for Arbites, checked our neighbors for betrayal. We learned to starve quietly, because even groaning from hunger could be mistaken for prayer to the shape thief. We laughed never. We hoped never. We endured. The galaxy has always been a cage. But now the cage was smaller, tighter, sharper. And all because of a boy with a watch. That was only the beginning. The battlefield had gone silent. Not because the war had ended, but because all sound seemed meaningless when two gods in flesh clashed. Kratos stood, chest heaving, the blades of chaos dripping with the ichor of demons. Across from him, a massive war-torn cathedral trembled as a figure descended from its shattered spire. Golden light cut through the polluted skies. It was him, the Emperor of mankind, his radiance dulled by millennia upon the golden throne, yet still infinite compared to mortals. Even reduced, his aura was a storm of power, faith, and sheer unyielding will. Space Marines nearby fell to their knees, sobbing prayers they did not fully understand. Even chaos demons wailed, their forms shriveling back into the warp, unable to endure his presence. But Kratos did not kneel. He stared up at the radiant titan and muttered, voice like gravel, "Another god come to chain me." The Emperor regarded him, not with anger, but with the weariness of one who has borne the burden of billions. His voice echoed not in ears, but in the marrow of the soul. "You do not belong to this galaxy, ghost of Sparta. Yet here you stand, spilling the blood of those who would defy my order." "Why?" Kratos snarled, flames licking his chains. "I fight because war is all I have left. Your galaxy reeks of tyrants who dare call themselves gods. I will kill them as I have killed my own." The Emperor's gaze did not waver. "You misunderstand. I do not claim godhood." Kratos spat, his voice rising in fury. "They all say that Zeus, Ares, even Odin, lies dressed as destiny. And you, surrounded by worshippers, drowning in temples, deny the title while bathing in its power." For the first time, a flicker of something passed through the Emperor's ageless face. Not anger, not pride, but pity. "I never asked for their worship, only their survival." The air crackled. Kratos' knuckles whitened on his chains. His rage screamed to lash out, to strike, to prove this Emperor another fraud. Yet deep in his scarred soul, he recognized something alien, familiarity. The Emperor was not like Zeus or Ares. He bore the same curse Kratos carried. Endless war, endless sacrifice, endless failure to protect those who depended on him. But their similarity did not make them allies. The Emperor raised a hand, and with it came the crushing weight of a star's gravity. Space bent. The ground cracked. Kratos staggered but roared in defiance, forcing his way upright. "You think you can break me?" He hurled the blades of chaos, their fiery chains lashing across the sky, striking the Emperor's psychic shield. Sparks like suns exploded, blinding all who looked on. The shockwave obliterated the cathedral ruins, Space Marines thrown like ragdolls. The Emperor did not move. His shield flared golden, absorbing the strike, his eyes never leaving Kratos. "You are strong, but strength alone cannot save anyone." Kratos lunged, fists blazing, slamming into the shield with a thunder that shook orbiting warships. His voice was raw, guttural. "Then watch as I prove you wrong." And so began the battle the Imperium would never record. The clash between the Emperor's silent wrath and the ghost of Sparta's endless fury. The throne world shook, not in metaphor, not in whispers of awe, but in the very stones of the palace itself. Where Kratos' chains met the Emperor's will, reality groaned. Marble split, gold leaf cracked, the air burned. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Golden Throne's shadow was not the tallest thing in the chamber. The first clash, the blades of chaos, trailing fire hot enough to warp steel, lashed forward. Each arc carved scars in the air, molten lines stitched across the void. Kratos roared, his voice not human, not God, something other, born from vengeance older than this galaxy. The Emperor raised his hand. Not a weapon, not a shield, just a gesture. A sun answered, a psychic barrier, radiant as a dawn no mortal eyes had ever seen, caught the chains mid-strike. Fire hissed against fire. Rage clashed with eternity. Sparks rained like meteors onto the cracked marble floor. The room screamed with the pressure. Every custodian within a mile fell to their knees. not from wounds, but from sheer proximity to the collision of willpower that no mind was built to endure. "You wield your fury as a child wields a hammer," the Emperor said, his voice carrying not through ears, but through the marrow of every living thing. Blunt, brutal, wasteful. Kratos pulled the chains back, flames curling along his forearms. His scarred face twisted in defiance. "I wield what kills gods." And then he leapt. Impact. The Spartan slammed into the Emperor with the weight of Olympus behind him. Blades raked. Sparks cascaded. The Emperor moved not away, not with fear, but with the grace of inevitability. His sword manifested, drawn not from a scabbard but from pure light. The sword of the Emperor, flame-wreathed, reality-bound. Steel met light, fire met fire. The collision cracked the sound barrier inside the chamber, a thunderclap that sent the High Lords stumbling like drunkards. The ground beneath them collapsed, plunging them into the cavernous depths beneath the palace. Marble shattered into dust. Gold melted into rivers. Statues of saints crumbled to powder. They fell into the underhive levels, black vaults where mortals never walked. The war beneath. In the dark abyss below the throne world, their duel became unchained. Kratos swung the blades of chaos in great arcs, carving through walls, slicing apart ancient machinery older than Terra itself. Every strike was a memory of gods slain, titans broken, and oaths burned in blood. The Emperor countered with raw psionics. Not beams, not bolts, waves, oceans of thought crashing into Kratos' mind, showing him visions of mankind's suffering. 1 billion children starving in hive slums, guardsmen screaming in trenches, entire worlds burning under the eye of chaos. "You fight for vengeance." The Emperor's voice echoed, everywhere and nowhere. "I fight so they may exist at all." Kratos bellowed, forcing the visions aside with brute force. His chains wrapped around one of the palace's colossal support pillars, and with a roar, he ripped it free and hurled it at the Emperor. The monolith shattered into dust before it could touch him. The Emperor raised his blade. With one strike, he cleaved the falling rubble into nothing but light and silence. The second clash. Kratos charged again, this time with the Leviathan axe in hand, frost trailing across molten stone. He hurled it with fury, an arc of ice against the sun. The Emperor caught it with his bare hand. Steam hissed where cold met heat. And then, for the first time, the Emperor's face showed strain. Just a flicker, just a moment, but Kratos saw it, and he smiled, a broken, bloody grin. Even suns can bleed. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, and his sword ignited brighter. This was no longer a duel. It was a collision of eras. The rage of the old world, born from betrayal and gods that deserved the blade, against the eternal, impossible weight of the Emperor, who bore humanity's future on his shoulders. Every strike now risked more than their pride. The palace shook. The throne groaned. Terra trembled. And somewhere deep below, hidden in vaults of silence, something old stirred at the sound. But that was only the beginning. The vaults beneath the imperial palace had never known light. They were not meant to. These were chambers older than the throne itself, carved in silence, sealed in secrecy, forgotten by all but the Emperor. Now, 2 titans had torn their way into the abyss, and silence was replaced by the sound of gods at war. The weight of blades and fire. Kratos swung the blades of chaos in wide arcs, fire trailing behind them like comet tails. Each strike split the dark with brilliance, carving molten gouges into black stone older than memory. Sparks sprayed like dying stars. The Emperor moved with terrifying control. His golden armor glowed with psychic fire, every step precise, every motion inevitable. Where Kratos' rage burned wild, his was discipline incarnate. The sword of the Emperor sang with flame. When it struck, walls collapsed. When it parried, the air itself cried out. Kratos drove forward, chain link and steel screaming, forcing the Emperor back step by step. It was not finesse. It was not elegance. It was raw refusal to yield. But with every strike, the Emperor did not simply block. He showed Kratos visions, truths, Visions of humanity, the Spartan's mind was torn open like parchment. He saw the endless trenches of Armageddon, guardsmen knee-deep in mud and blood, praying to a throne they would never see. The starving hives of Necromunda, where children fought over rat bones in shadows that never knew the sun. The black ships, filled with silent psychers, doomed to feed the throne's hunger so humanity might endure another day. Every soul crying out, every voice a prayer, a scream, or a curse. "This is what I bear." The Emperor's voice thundered inside Kratos' skull. Every soul, every world, every choice. Their survival demands sacrifice. Kratos staggered beneath the weight of it. Not the psychic assault, it was not pain he fought, it was understanding. The Godslayer had seen gods fall. He had seen worlds burn. But never had he seen billions suffer for something so fragile as survival. He spat blood, raised his blades, and growled, "You speak of burden. I see chains. The same chains I broke." The Emperor's retort, the Emperor advanced. The ground burned beneath his steps. Chains? His voice was a storm. Chains are mercy compared to what waits beyond the veil. Without me, there is no mankind. Only ruin. Only the warp. Kratos answered with the Leviathan axe, hurled with all the rage of Sparta's ghost. The Emperor caught it once more, but this time he grunted as frost kissed his palm, searing where no flame should falter. Kratos lunged in close, fists slamming into the golden chestplate, denting the unbreakable. The Emperor retaliated with a thought, an invisible hammer of will that threw Kratos across the cavern. The Spartan struck a wall hard enough to collapse it, rubble burying him in stone. For a heartbeat, silence, dust and flame. Then the rubble stirred. Kratos rose, his skin torn, his eyes burning. He lifted the blades once more. "I am no pawn, no subject, no worshipper." And then he charged again. The clash of ideals as they fought. The duel grew less physical, more symbolic. Every strike was an argument, every block a counterpoint. Kratos fought for freedom, for defiance, for the right to break every yoke, no matter who placed it. The Emperor fought for survival, for unity, for the price of a species that could not endure freedom without collapse. Rage against duty, defiance against destiny, man against God, and neither yielding. And then, as the cavern quaked under their battle, the Emperor spoke. Not in thunder, but in something closer to sorrow. "You have slain gods, Spartan. You know what they are. Arrogance given form. But I am not them. I did not ask to be worshipped. I demanded obedience, for without it, your kind dies." For the first time, his voice cracked. Not from weakness, but from truth. Kratos froze mid-swing, blades hovering, fire dimming just for a moment. His scarred face twisted, rage clashing with something he despised more than gods. Recognition, because in those words he heard his own failures, his own son, his own sins. But hesitation is death. The Emperor did not waste the pause. His blade struck not to kill but to remind. Light slammed into Kratos' chest, hurling him across the cavern once more. As Kratos rose again, slower this time, blood dripping from his mouth, he growled with teeth bared. "Then you are cursed as I am, to bear a burden that only ends in death." The Emperor's eyes flickered like dying stars. "Perhaps, but it is mine to bear, not yours." The vault above them groaned. Stone cracked. The force of their war was tearing the palace itself apart. And in the shifting shadows of the abyss, something stirred that had not moved in millennia. But that was only the beginning. The abyss could no longer hold them. Stone collapsed, steel warped, and vaults older than Terra's memory split open under the strain. The duel of wills had become a duel of total war. Where Kratos struck, the air ignited. Where the Emperor moved, the ground turned to ash. The palace above shook as if Terra itself were trying to cast them off. The Emperor unbound until now, the Emperor had fought with restraint. Every blow measured, every strike a lesson. But now restraint burned away. The sword of the Emperor blazed like a newborn star, flames pouring from it in rivers of gold. Psychic fire coursed through his armor, through his eyes, through the very air. Every custodian on the surface fell prostrate. Every mortal nearby screamed as their dreams turned to fire. The Emperor spoke one word, and the chamber shook. Enough! The word itself struck Kratos like a hammer. His knees buckled. Blood sprayed from his mouth. The flames of the blades guttered. For any other being, it would have been the end. But Kratos rose. Always he rose. His skin burned. His scars cracked open. His lungs filled with ash. Yet he stood, dragging the Leviathan axe into his hand. Frost bled from it, fighting against the sun. I have heard that word before, from gods who thought themselves eternal. They all bled. So will you. The Spartan unleashed. Kratos roared, and the roar was not human. It was the sound of chains breaking, of oaths burning, of Olympus falling. His body erupted in scarlet glow as Spartan rage consumed him. The blades of chaos flared white-hot. The axe hissed with ice that bit even fire. And then he charged. The impact was cataclysm. The Leviathan axe struck the Emperor's blade, frost colliding with solar flame. Shockwaves tore the cavern apart, hurling rubble into the sky above Terra. A fissure split through the palace, light bursting upward as if the planet itself had been wounded. Above, millions looked to the sky and saw it glow with fire and lightning. They thought it the end of days. War of flame and ice. Kratos struck with both weapons, each swing meant to kill. The Emperor answered each one with fire, his sword a sun that burned without end. Every collision lit the world as if stars were being born and dying in the same instant. Kratos hurled the axe, frost carving through molten rock. The Emperor caught it with his blade, shattering it into shards of ice that fell like meteors. The blades lashed out, wrapping around the Emperor's gauntlet, dragging him forward. Kratos pulled, snarling, but the Emperor did not stumble. He advanced, dragging Kratos instead. With one swing, the Emperor's sword cut through a mountain of stone above them, and daylight poured into the abyss, a wound in Terra's skin. Every strike now tore at reality. Warp echoes howled at the edges of perception, drawn by the fury, by the scale, by the sheer violence of two beings who should not exist in the same world. The cracks of doubt. Yet even as Kratos fought, even as he matched gods and titans blow for blow, the Emperor's voice clawed at him. Not with volume, not with power, but with truth. This is what I am, Spartan. The shield between mankind and the abyss. You think me a tyrant? Without me, there is no man left to tyrannize. Only monsters. Only chaos. The words pressed against Kratos' skull. He wanted to shut them out. He wanted to believe only in rage. But in the fire, he saw again the boy he once held. Atreus, his son. And in the Emperor's fire, he saw the same burden. A father's curse. A protector's damnation. For a moment, just a moment, Kratos faltered. And the Emperor struck. The blade of the sun, the sword of the Emperor, slashed through the blades of chaos. Not breaking them, but searing them, silencing their fire. For the first time in an age, Kratos felt his weapons fail him. He staggered, growling, fury boiling. But the Emperor was already upon him. The golden blade pressed to his throat, fire searing his scarred flesh. The chamber shook with silence. You cannot kill me, Kratos, as you cannot kill what I carry. End this now. Kratos' eyes burned, not with fear, but with the same hatred that had carried him across gods and monsters. His hands tightened on the chains. Then you will have to take my surrender from my corpse. And with a roar that split the palace itself, he broke free, slamming his forehead into the Emperor's helm. Sparks flew, fire screamed, and the duel ignited once more. Above Terra, the sky turned red with fire and frost. On the throne, alarms screamed for the first time in 10,000 years. And in the depths of the warp, something vast turned its gaze toward Terra, drawn by the impossible war of titans. But that was only the beginning. The world above was breaking. From the streets of Terra's hives, mortals looked up and saw the sky split in fire and frost. A storm unlike any the Imperium had ever known raged over the throne world. Lightning that glowed red, fire that fell in shards of ice, and thunder that spoke in voices no man could endure. Billions fell to their knees, some praying, some weeping, some too numb to understand. Rumors already spread. The emperor was at war with a god. The emperor himself could bleed. And in the shattered abyss below, those rumors were being written in fire. Two giants, both wounded, Kratos knelt, one knee pressing against stone that bled molten rivers. His chest heaved, torn with burns and cuts deep enough to kill any mortal 100 times over. His hands shook as he raised the blades of chaos again, their once blazing fire guttering, their chains heavy. The emperor stood across from him, not unscathed. Golden armor blackened, the radiance around him flickering, cracks in his psychic shield showing for the first time. His blade still burned like a sun, but suns too could dim. They were both bleeding, both burning, both refusing to fall. The words in the ash, the emperor's voice filled the cavern, still thunderous, but weary now, like mountains shifting. You fight because you cannot stop, Kratos, because rage is all you are. Kratos spat blood, raised his head, eyes blazing scarlet. I fight because gods demand it. Always. They build chains, they call them mercy, they call them duty, but chains they remain. The emperor stepped forward, fire spilling with each step. His presence pressed on Kratos like the weight of a world. And what of your chains, Spartan? To vengeance, to your own fury. You call yourself free, but you are more bound than any man I rule. Kratos froze, his scarred face twisted because the words were true. The rage he carried, the blood he shed, the curse of the ghost of Sparta. It had followed him into this galaxy, just as it had in every world before. But defiance burned louder than truth. At least my chains are mine. The emperor's offer. The emperor lowered his sword. The light dimmed. For the first time, he looked not like a god, not like a tyrant, but like a man bearing eternity. Then hear me. I will not slay you, Kratos. You are too dangerous to waste. Your fury could be turned against the true enemy, the warp, the dark gods, chaos itself. Fight with me, not against me. Be executioner, not rebel. The chamber went silent. Even the fire dimmed, as if the galaxy itself leaned in to hear Kratos' answer. Kratos stared, blood running down his jaw. He had never been offered alliance by a god. Only threats, only chains. For a heartbeat, he saw Atreus again, his son, begging him to be more than rage, to choose more than vengeance. And yet, Kratos' fists tightened on the chains. The breaking point, he staggered forward, step by step, until his face was inches from the emperor's burning helm. His voice was gravel, blood, fire. I do not serve gods, not Olympus, not Asgard, not you. And he struck. The blades of chaos, glowing white-hot with the last of his rage, lashed across the emperor's chest, carving deep into golden armor. Sparks and fire screamed. The emperor staggered, but did not fall. Instead, his sword rose once more, brighter than ever, burning as if to consume the world. And in that moment, both knew only one would walk away. The choice of titans above. Terra screamed as earthquakes ripped through its hives. Below, the warp howled, feeding on the storm of rage and willpower. And in the cavern, God and Godslayer clashed once more. Every blow a choice, every strike a judgment. Freedom or unity, defiance or survival, chains of rage or chains of empire. And as their weapons met in fire and ice, it seemed for a heartbeat that the galaxy itself held its breath. But that was only the beginning. Kratos stood upon the blackened earth of a world that no longer screamed. It whispered. The battle had ended, though no victory could be claimed. Titans of flesh and iron lay broken across the wasteland. Chaos demons dissolved into the warp like smoke, and imperial banners burned beside shattered Astartes' helms. The god of war had brought fury, but fury could not end the war. For the first time since his arrival in this galaxy, Kratos felt stillness. His chains hung loose at his sides, their weight a reminder of every slaughtered foe, every failed redemption. The Spartans he once knew were dust, the Olympians ash, and now this universe, this endless theater of suffering, reflected his own cursed path. Yet the silence did not last. The ground trembled, not from marching armies, but from the whispers of the warp itself. They coiled around him like serpents, offering power, dominion, eternity. A voice, ancient and mocking, slithered through his skull. Even gods kneel, ghost of Sparta. In this galaxy, all become servants or prey. Kratos snarled, I kneel to no one, and with that he turned from the shadows. But the galaxy was watching. The Imperium, broken yet unyielding, whispered his name. The orcs laughed and promised a greater fight should they find him again. The Tyranids hungered for his godflesh, and the ruinous powers, each one, marked him. Kratos was no longer an intruder. He was a constant. A new war had begun, not between gods and men, but between Kratos and the entire galaxy itself. And as he walked into the unknown, his scarred hand tightened around the blades of chaos, their fire casting one last glow against the dead horizon. The Warhammer universe had gained a weapon it did not ask for, nor could ever control. And the god of war had found a crucible that would never end. The Omnitrix pulsed, not with the steady green rhythm Ben had known all his life, but with something heavier. The light spread across his wrist like veins of living fire, its glow cutting through the gloom of the ruined hive city. The ground around him was littered with bodies, human, orc, and Tyranid alike. For once, they had not killed each other. They had been caught in his storm. Ben stood, chest heaving, hands trembling. He hadn't meant for Atomix's nuclear discharge to spread so far. He hadn't meant to vaporize 3 whole city blocks. But Warhammer 40,000 was not a world where holding back was safe. From the shadows, the Inquisitor stepped forward. His rosette gleamed faintly, a mark of authority so absolute it could damn entire populations to death. His power-armored escorts raised their weapons, but they did not fire. Not yet. Ben10, the Inquisitor's voice carried like a funeral bell. You bear a weapon that no human, no alien, no god should wield. A single twist of your device can annihilate a regiment, warp a starship, unmake a fortress. Tell me, why should you be allowed to live? Ben's jaw tightened. Because I fight the same things you do. Chaos, Tyranids, orcs. I don't fight for conquest. I fight to protect. The Inquisitor's eyes were sharp as a bolter shell. Protection is a luxury. In this galaxy, survival is bought in blood. Your Omnitrix is a heresy beyond reckoning. Do you think the Emperor himself would tolerate it? Before Ben could answer, the Omnitrix flared. A surge of green energy flooded his body. Not a transformation, not yet. Instead, the holographic forms of dozens of aliens spiraled around him in ghostly light. For arms, XLR-8, Heat Blast, Humongosaur, Alien X. They spun like a wheel of impossible choices. But something was wrong. They weren't just choices anymore. They were voices. Each alien, each DNA sample, each shard of possibility stored within the Omnitrix began to speak. Use me. Crush them. Burn the heretics. Run. Survive. Freeze. Silence. Kill. The galaxy's darkness was seeping into the device, whispering through every form. The Omnitrix was no longer just a weapon, it was a chorus of war. Ben clutched his wrist. Shut up. You don't control me. I control you. But deep in his mind, Alien X stirred. The cosmic entity, the most dangerous of all, unfolded its impossible wings. The stars seemed to bend around it, as if reality itself bowed to its presence. Alien X did not speak, it judged. And in that silence, Ben realized the truth. If he kept using the Omnitrix here in this galaxy, among these endless wars, it would not remain a tool of protection. It would become a weapon of annihilation. The line between hero and godkiller would vanish. The Inquisitor raised a hand. His men readied their bolters. Choose, boy. Prove you are not another monster in disguise. Ben's thumb hovered over the dial. The wheel spun, green light blinding, alien voices screaming in his skull. For a heartbeat, he considered Alien X. He could end it all. End the Inquisition, the Imperium, the Orcs, chaos, burn the galaxy clean. But then he remembered Gwen, Grandpa Max Kevin. His world, his family, the ones who taught him what being a hero meant. Slowly, he lowered his hand. The Omnitrix dimmed. "I'm not your weapon," Ben said, voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "I'm not your god, and I'm sure as hell not your monster. I'll fight the darkness, but I won't become it." The Inquisitor's eyes narrowed. The silence stretched long enough to choke. Then, with a slow, deliberate gesture, he lowered his hand. The bolters lowered, but the words he spoke next were not mercy. "Then prove it. The Tyranids have breached orbit, a swarm unlike any we have seen. You say you are not our enemy? Show me, or burn with the rest." Ben looked to the sky. Green fire of re-entry lit the clouds as countless bioships broke through atmosphere. The city groaned under the shadow of the swarm. The Omnitrix beeped. The dial locked. A single silhouette appeared. Humongosaur. Ben smiled grimly. "Fine. Let's show your galaxy what a hero looks like." He slammed the dial down, and the earth shook.